Hello everyone, let us begin this session with the 8th chapter, Human Health and Diseases. First, let us understand what is health. What do you mean by health? Health doesn't mean it is absence of diseases or physical fitness. Then how do we define health as? Health can be defined as a complete physical, mental and social well-being. A person should be physically strong enough, mentally strong enough, that is the individual should not be suffering from any sort of mental illness, any depression, and the individual should be socially well-being. That means to say he should be socially interacting with the society. And when all these criteria fulfill, then we are calling that particular individual as a healthy individual. Years ago, Hippocrates said that health, in case of the human body, it contains blood, phlegm, yellow bile and black bile. Now, this blood, phlegm, yellow bile and black bile are the body fluids which is present in a body of individual, and this is called as body humor. Body humor means to say humor means fluid. If there is any variation in the proportion of these fluids in the body, then it will result in diseases. If the proportion of all these body fluids is in the correct proportion, then the person is represented or called as a healthy individual. Now, we all know that these things are not correct. These are just an idea from the reflective thought. So what are the factors which affects the health? There are 3 factors which affects the health. The first one is the genetic disorders. The second one is the infections, and the third one is the lifestyle. Genetic orders means when the defect the child inherits from the parents from the birth. Any genetic defect when the child is inheriting from their parents from the birth, then you are calling it as genetic disorder. So genetic disorder is one more factor which is affecting the health of an individual. Second one is the infection. If there is any pathogen which affects the body of an individual like bacteria, viruses, protozoan, these are all the disease causing microorganisms which can affect the health of an individual. Third one is the lifestyle. When there is a sedentary lifestyle, when there is no regular exercise, when there is no balanced diet, these features also affects the health. So, genetic disorders, infections and the lifestyle, these are the factors which affect the health of an individual. Now, what do you mean by disease? Disease means when the functioning of an organ is affected, then you are calling it as a disease. When the body functions are not happening properly due to various reasons like this, then it results in diseases. Now there are 2 types of diseases. The first one is infectious disease and the second one is non-infectious disease. What do you mean by infectious disease? The disease which is transmitted from person to person is called as infectious disease. So that means to say this disease is contagious in nature. It is transmitted from one person to another person. For example, AIDS. And the second one is non-infectious diseases. What do you mean by non-infectious diseases? It means to say the disease which does not transmit from person to person. This disease is not transmitted from one individual to another individual. So this is called as non-infectious disease. For example, cancer. Apart from these things, health is also affected by intakes of drug and alcohol. So alcohol and drugs also affect the health of the individual. So now let us study the common infectious diseases in man. So the first disease which we are going to study is the bacterial disease. So the first bacterial disease is typhoid. So the pathogen which causes the typhoid is a bacteria, and the name of the bacteria is Salmonella typhi. So Salmonella typhi is the bacteria which causes the typhoid. The mode of transmission. How is this disease transmitted? This disease is transmitted when the food and the water is contaminated. When the food and the water gets contaminated, then the healthy individual gets affected by this disease. And what are the symptoms of this disease? The symptoms of this disease is the person will have a continuous high fever. The individual will also suffer from the stomach pain, constipation, headache, and loss of appetite. What do you mean by constipation? The irregular bowel movements is called as constipation, and loss of appetite means the person will not feel like eating. So these are the symptoms which are found in an individual suffering from typhoid. In the extreme case of typhoid, it results in intestinal perforation and death. What do you mean by interstitial perforation? Interstitial perforation means to say when the disease is severe, the bacteria will affect the intestinal portion, that is the small intestine of an healthy individual, and it results in an internal bleeding. So the intestinal perforation means to say the holes, perforation means to say the holes, the outer mucous layer, everything is eroded away by this bacteria and it results in the bleeding. The intestinal perforation results in intestinal bleeding and finally resulting in the death of an individual in extreme cases. So the organ which is affected by the typhoid is the small intestine. And how do you determine or how do you confirm an individual has got a typhoid? We are detecting it with the help of a Widal test. So what is Widal test? Widal test is the test which confirms that the individual is having a typhoid. Now, what is the sample they use in order to determine that? The sample what they use is the serum. Therefore, Widal test is a serological test. So, they are extracting the serum sample from an infected individual and then they are going to determine or confirm whether the individual has got the typhoid. So, there is a classic case of medicine, that of a Mary Mallon. Mary Mallon is a name of a woman who is cook by profession, and this lady got the name as Typhoid Mary. And why did she get the name as a Typhoid Mary? Is because she was a carrier of this typhoid disease. She used to carry this bacteria inside her body and she was just a carrier of this disease. And since she was a cook by profession, in whichever place she used to go and cook the food, there all the healthy individual used to get affected by this disease because this Typhoid Mary used to contaminate the food and the water by the bacteria. As a result of which, she got the name as Typhoid Mary. And it is after so many years they were able to understand that she was the carrier of this disease. And the second bacterial disease what we are going to study today is pneumonia. Pneumonia is caused by two bacteria. The first one is Streptococcus pneumoniae and the second one is Haemophilus influenzae. So there are two bacteria which causes pneumonia. And what are the organs which get affected by pneumonia? The organ is the lung, especially the alveoli of the lungs. Here the alveoli gets filled with the fluid. So the alveoli region, when it is getting filled with the fluid, then the person will not be able to respire or breathe properly. So what is the mode of transmission? The mode of transmission of this disease is when a healthy individual, when he inhales the droplets or the aerosols which are released by an infected person. So when an infected person sneezes or when he is talking, obviously there will be some minute drops of saliva or the fine particles which will be going out through his mouth. At that point of time, when a healthy individual is inhaling it, then the healthy individual gets affected by this disease. And along with that, when there is a sharing of glasses and utensils also, there at that point of time an healthy individual gets affected. So there should be no sharing of the glasses, utensils, towel or any other personal belongings of the infected individual. Then what are the symptoms of this disease? The symptoms of this disease is respiratory problem. Since the alveoli gets accumulated with the fluid, the individual will not be able to respire properly, as a result of which he will have the respiratory problems. He will be developing the fever, he will be developing the chill, shiverness and cough and headache. So these are the symptoms associated with this disease. And the second disease is the viral disease. The example for the viral disease is common cold. So what are the pathogen which causes the common cold? The pathogen which causes the common cold is rhinovirus. And the mode of transmission is inhaling the droplets resulting from the cough or sneezes from the infected individual. When any individual who is affected from the cold, if he or she sneezes, then this aerosols, it goes into the air and then it affects the healthy individual. And apart from that, when the healthy individual, when he is exposed to the contaminated objects of this infected individual, then the healthy individual also gets affected by the common cold. What are the symptoms of this disease? The symptoms of this disease is the person will have an infected nose, he will have the infection even in the respiratory passage, he will develop the nasal blockage or the nasal congestion. So the nasal blockage is also called as nasal congestion. He will have the nasal discharge. So the mucus come out from the nose. He will develop the sore throat. Sore throat means pain in the throat. Hoarseness. Hoarseness means there is a variation in the quality of the voice. Cough, headache, all these symptoms will be present in an infected individual, and this symptom, it lasts for around 3 to 7 days. And the third disease we are discussing is the protozoan disease. Protozoan disease example is malaria. Malaria is caused by a pathogen, and the name of this protozoa is called as Plasmodium species. So there are different types of Plasmodium. So the first one is Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malariae, Plasmodium falciparum. So these are the different species of Plasmodium. Now what are the modes of transmission? The modes of transmission of malaria is with the female Anopheles mosquito. So the female Anopheles mosquito, this transmits the malaria. What are the symptoms which is developed in an individual infected with malaria? The symptoms are the chill and a very high fever, and the infected individual develop these symptoms only when the hemozoin is released into their blood. So once this hemozoin, that is the toxin, when this is released inside the blood of an individual, it results in the chill and high fever, and this fever keeps on reoccurring every 3 to 4 days. So now let us study the life cycle of the Plasmodium. So the life cycle of this Plasmodium starts with the mosquito, and this mosquito is already infected with this protozoa. So it is an infected mosquito which causes this disease. And when an infected mosquito, it goes and bites the healthy person, it releases sporozoites. So sporozoites are the parasites. This is released from the salivary gland of the mosquito. And when these sporozoites are injected inside the body of an individual, it reaches to the liver. So what are these sporozoites? Sporozoites are nothing but the spindle shaped cells. It is a parasite. It is in a highly infectious stage. It is one of the stage of the Plasmodium. And this sporozoid, it reaches the liver through the blood. And what happens in the liver? In the liver, there is an asexual reproduction of this sporozoid. So there is a continuous asexual reproduction which is happening inside the liver cell, as a result of which the liver cell bursts open and all the sporozoids are now this sporozoid is converted to the next stage, that is merozoids. So now it is the merozoids which is released from the liver cells, and this merozoids travel into the RBC. So once the merozoids, it leaves the liver cell, it enters into an RBC, wherein again the asexual reproduction takes place. So the merozoids, it enters into the RBC and it undergoes the asexual reproduction in RBC. As a result of which, of the continuous asexual reproduction, the multiplication of the cells, the RBC, it bursts open. The RBC bursts and it releases a toxin, a chemical called as hemozoin. When this hemozoin is released from RBC, it causes the fever and the chill in the human beings. Now, this merozoid is converted to the next stage, that is gametocytes, and the gametocytes are the sexual stage of Plasmodium. So you can find the male gametocyte and the female gametocyte. You can find a male gametocyte in the RBC and a female gametocyte in RBC, and these RBC, they do not burst. Now what is going to happen is the mosquito will come and suck the blood. The moment the mosquito sucks the blood of this affected individual, these gametocytes enter inside the body of the mosquito. Once it enters inside the body of the mosquito, fertilization takes place and it develops to give rise to zygote, and this zygote is diploid in nature. So once this zygote is formed, it starts to divide and give rise to the sporozoid stage, and this sporozoid is the most infectious stage, and this sporozoid, which is present in the gut of the mosquito, will travel all the way up to the salivary gland. So now the sporozoids are present in the salivary gland of the mosquito, and now it is ready to get transmitted from the body of the mosquito to the body of a human being. So there are certain points which you have to know with respect to the life cycle of the Plasmodium. That is, the mosquito is known as the host and the man is an intermediate host. Why is mosquito called as the host of the life cycle of this Plasmodium? It is because the sexual cycle of the Plasmodium takes place in the body of the mosquito, whereas the asexual reproduction of this Plasmodium, it takes place inside the body of the human beings. Asexual reproduction of this Plasmodium, it takes place first in the liver cells and then it takes place in an RBC cells. But there are no sexual reproduction happening inside the body of the human beings. Now, why the sexual reproduction does not occur inside the body of human beings is because of an increased temperature inside the body of humans, and even the pH is also very less. Apart from these things, the enzymes which are needed for the development of the gametocyte is also not present in the body of the human beings. Therefore, the sexual cycle occur in the body of the mosquito. So, the sexual cycle occur in the body of the mosquito, wherein there is a decreased temperature, that is around 5 degrees centigrade. Then for the development of the gametocyte into the zygote, it needs a very less temperature. So the temperature decreases to probably around 5 degrees centigrade inside the body of the mosquito. And here the pH is also very high in case of the gut, in the gut of the mosquito, that is around 8 to 8.2. And even the gametocyte activating factor, or this enzyme, is present only in the body of the mosquito. So what is the name of the enzyme? The name of this is xanthurenic acid. So this acid is also available only in the body of the mosquito. Therefore, the sexual cycle happens only inside the body of the mosquito, and therefore it is considered as a primary host. And the second protozoan disease which we are going to study is amoebiosis. So, amoebiosis is also called as amoebic dysentery. And the pathogen which causes this amoebiasis is Entamoeba histolytica. So, this is a protozoa which causes the amoebiasis. The mode of transmission is houseflies. So, housefly, they transmit this parasite from the feces, that is the excreta, to the food and the water. So, the housefly is going to contaminate the food and the water with this protozoan parasite. And what are the symptoms of this disease? The symptoms of this disease is the abdominal pain, the constipation, stools with excess mucus and blood clots. So, the person will be having severe abdominal pain and irregular bowel movements, and he will also have the stools which contain lot of blood clots. And the next disease what we are going to study is the helminthus disease. Helminthus disease, the first one is the Ascariasis. Ascariasis is caused by a pathogen. The name of the pathogen is Ascaris lumbricoides. Ascaris lumbricoides is an intestinal parasite, and the mode of transmission is the contaminated water, contaminated vegetable, contaminated fruits, and even the contaminated soil which contains the egg of this parasite. And the symptoms of this diseases are, the first one is the internal bleeding, muscular pain, fever, blockage of intestinal passage. So, the intestinal passage, it gets blocked because of Ascaris lumbricoides. There is a continuous reproduction, as a result of which there will be a deposition of lots of Ascaris lumbricoides, which results in the blockage of intestinal passage. And the second helminthus disease what we are going to study is Filariasis. Filariasis, the other name is elephantiasis. So, the pathogen here is Vauchereria. There are different species of Vauchereria. The first one is Vauchereria bancrofti, and the second one is Vauchereria malayi. These are the two different species of Vauchereria. And the mode of transmission. Here the disease is transmitted by the bite of female Culex mosquito. And what are the symptoms of this disease? The symptoms of this disease is the limbs and the genital organs are affected. Since the filarial worms, it lives in the lymphatic vessel of the lower limbs. Since this filarial worm, it lives in the lymphatic vessel of the leg. As a result of which the limbs, which is affected, it becomes that of a very big, huge size to that of like an elephant. Therefore, we are calling it as elephantiasis. And the next disease what we are studying is the fungal disease. So, the name of this disease is ringworm. Ringworm is caused by a pathogen. There are different types of pathogen. First one is the microsporum, second one is the trichophyton, and the third one is epidermophyton. All these are the funguses which cause the ringworm. Now, these funguses, you can find them in the groin and in between the toes. Groin means in between the thigh, below the stomach region. So, that is called as groin. You can find this fungus in between the toes and in the groin region. What is the mode of transmission? The mode of transmission, it can be from the soil, or it can be by using the towel, the cloth and the comb of an infected individual. Apart from these things, the heat and the moisture, they help the fungus to grow. What are the symptoms of this ringworm disease? The symptoms of this is intense itching. There is an intense itching, there is an appearance of dry scaly lesions. That means to say, when the outer epidermal layer is removed off, the skin becomes very dry, very itchy. And this is present on the skin, scalp, that is onto the head region, the scalp of the head, and in the nails. Prevention and the control of disease. So how can we prevent this spreading of this disease? What are the precautions we can take in order to avoid these diseases? So first of all, we need to maintain the personal and the public hygiene. So let's first discuss about the personal hygiene. The personal hygiene includes cleaning of the body and consumption of the clean drinking water and the food, etc. So we need to stay away from the contaminated food and the water and keep our body clean. So the next one is the public hygiene. Proper disposal of the waste and excreta. Second one is the periodic cleaning, then disinfection of the water reservoirs. Like you have to periodically clean and disinfect the water resources, like reservoirs like the well, what is there in your house, or the pool, or a swimming pool, or ponds. So whatever is there, you need to disinfect it regularly. And you should also disinfect the cesspools. Cesspools means underground temporary tanks which is used for drainage and the other things. So that is called a cesspool and the tank. So there should be a periodic cleaning and disinfection of this water reservoirs like well, pools, cesspools and tanks. And we need to avoid the contact with the infected persons. And standard practices of hygiene, it should be maintained during the public catering. Next one is control and eliminate the vectors, that is the mosquito and their breeding places. So we can control and avoid these vectors, that is this mosquito, by making sure that there are no stagnant water, and also we have to make sure that if we have the coolers in our house, we have to regularly change the water from these water coolers, and we should also make sure that we use the mosquito nets while sleeping. So in this way we can keep the mosquitoes away. And we can even introduce the larvivorous fishes like gambusia in the pond. So gambusia is the fishes which feed upon the larvae of the mosquito. So introducing this gambusia fishes also, it can decrease the rate of the mosquito. And we can even provide the door and the window with the wire mesh. So if you have the window mesh or door mesh, it can avoid the entry of the mosquito inside our house. And if we are maintaining these precautions, we can avoid this vector-borne diseases like malaria, dengue, chikungunya and filariasis.